Sir Cliff Richard, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Feels like 150 years, but funnily enough, it seems to have gone rather quickly. But I have been very fortunate in my career, and I can remember those early days when people really did fling themselves at the stage. And nowadays, it's more like fun, because my audience has grown up with me, and fortunately, there's enough people who are coming in, probably dragged along by their parents, who end up enjoying it, and therefore come the following year too. And when you get the screaming now, it's not the same way, but it's just as loud.
A lot of people of your generation become old-fashioned and become cliched, but you always seem to stay contemporary. Is it the people you work with that keep you modern? Is it your desire to still be successful now? Why are you sat here and others aren't?
It's all of that's true, really. I have to have the need and the desire to do what I do, and then I have to find people who know what they're doing. And so, for instance, when I'm making records now, my records are as contemporary and as good, I think, as anybody else's, because I use the same writers, the same producers, the same technicians, definitely the same technology. And so, in a way, technology has been a fantastic influence on our industry in particular, because we all have the same base to jump from. And I like that now. I like the fact that one can still compete. And there's no reason why you should be trapped in the past. I don't dislike the past, though. In fact, when I go on my tour, the forthcoming tour will have a little bit of everything. I never, ever go on stage without singing something from my past. Why? Because it's part of people's memories. It's only fair to sing it for them. I don't sing Living Doll every single time I go on stage, but I probably could. But I'm fortunate in there's a whole batch of oldies that were big successes. So maybe I'll do Summer Holiday and Living Doll and a few others one year. And then the next time I go on tour, I'll do Bachelor Boy and Gee Whiz It's You and I Could Easily Fall. So I'm able to split it up. It just means that when you come to a concert of mine and you're wanting me to sing something, I may have done it 2 years ago and therefore I'm not doing it this time, I'll do it next time. So it's just one of those things. But I love to sing the new things as well. So when I go on tour, I try to do it all.
Now, I believe you're in your mid to late 30s now. Is show business as fun now as it was when you were in your 20s?
I think it's more fun. When you remember back to the start days of rock and roll, way back in the 50s, of course, nothing can compete with the excitement of finding yourself doing an audition for EMI Records with the Norrie Paramore, whose name you've seen on green labels, conducting orchestras and being producer. That was so exciting. What that period doesn't compete with is what we've been given to how we deal with our careers now. Technology, the stage presentations that we can put on are so superior that once you become a known artist, what you need is a way of performing. You need to be allowed to perform, and technology has allowed us to perform in a way that we couldn't do in those days. So in that respect, I still think that I prefer it now, but I wouldn't change any of the past. I'd leave it as it was. It was very exciting as it was.
Is the excitement from the thrill of the crowd any different now to when it was then? I mean, how do you deal with the excitement of going on stage? Is it all in your stride now, or are there still those nerves and that feeling of excitement like there was in the beginning?
I don't know that you can ever take anything like this in your stride, because you spend most of your time thinking, I don't deserve this. How am I still here? How come Marty Wilde is not still singing? Because mind you, I think he still does concerts. But why am I doing all these big things and he's not? Because when I think of Marty and people like Dickie Pride, they seem to be so much better than I was when I was younger. I was just a greasy slob. I think I just got lucky, met good writers, got good songs and producers, and then found, yes, I can do this. And then I've had to work really hard to sustain it all. But what was your question?
The excitement and the thrill of going on stage.
Yeah, the excitement is still there, and I can never take it in my stride. It's because probably as you get older, what happens is you appreciate it more, because you're thinking to yourself, I didn't think I was going to last like this. I thought I might have one. In fact, there's a great quote I was shown just today where I said to a reporter, I thought I'd be all over by the time I was 21. And now I'm 21. I think I can get to, I think I'll be going when I'm 25. So that's the way we used to think in those days. You never thought of longevity, but it came and I grasped it and worked at it. And now here I am after all these years, and I'm still able to compete in some senses, I can use that phrase. The playing field's not the same as it was, but I can still make records. I've got my duets album coming out. I'm going to be on this tour coming out where I'm going to go not only over Britain, but I'm going to tour on in January, February, March into the Far East, to South Africa, back down to Europe again. So here I am doing what I did 150 years ago, and it's lovely. I like it.
The buzzword today is X Factor, and when I look at someone like you, is it more important to have a personality and good looks than to have great records, or do you have to have both?
I think it starts with the record. You could actually be an unknown and ugly, and have a great record that hits. It's more difficult, I suppose, if you don't have a stage presence what's the best way to say this? It helps to be youthful. It helps to look youngish. Even if you don't look great, you can look young. And that's all part of the imagery of rock and roll. So therefore, the two really should go together. And the funny thing is, when I think about it, most rockers, even if they may not be seen as Brad Pitt or, whoever you want to quote from the good-looking guys on the movies, you'll find that they have a look. It's not necessary to be the archetypal, handsome young guy. You just need a look. And most rockers, we find a look. Because when I look back at early pictures of myself, I don't think I was really good looking, but I certainly had a look. I had a look. There was definitely a look. I didn't look like other people. And that really counts for something. Although, funnily enough, now, I often think when I'm walking down the street and I see young people, they all look the same to me. They all wear the baggy jeans. They've all got the same colour chops. They wear the hats around the back, the hat around the side, and a red T-shirt or whatever it is, and all look like cast-offs. And so I don't know where that's gone. When I started, first thing I did was look around at what everyone else was wearing and decide not to wear that. And I went out and I'm the first bad taste dresser in rock and roll. I got pink jacket, black shirt, pink tie, fluorescent pink socks, grey suede shoes and black trousers. And I changed the colour. I went from pink to white to mustard yellow. It's all just fun, but I always wanted to look different. And I still find myself thinking, I don't want to look like that. I want to look different. And I try to find things. It's harder and harder, of course, because, fashion and design has become a big thing. And nowadays, most people can afford something, even if it's not the real fashion designer name, they can certainly get pretty darn good copies of the stuff. So it's harder to look different now, but I still think that's the preference. And that's why having a voice that is acceptable to the public is vital, but how you look as a person is also vital. There is something about the way you present yourself as a rocker that counts.
I hear what you're saying about being unique, because I'm different looking, clinically obese, ginger hair, and no fashion sense. What's the difference then? How do you become unique and good, or just odd?
Girls screaming at you. Now, I can take myself out of the equation, but when I was 18, for instance, the first time I sang Move It on television, they didn't scream at me. It was the pilot show, and they screamed at Marty Wilde. He was on the same show. I believe he was on the same show. We were early. They didn't scream at me. Move It got to number 2, and the next time I appeared, they screamed at me. So, the audience is just as affected by things. It is a psychological thing. Oh, this is the new person we scream at. And you can come into fashion. It's how to hold on to that moment and make it last that I'm realizing now is what takes the hard work. And the screaming isn't done in the same way. When a 16-year-old screams, there's a different kind of scream. It's that their passion is so great. Nowadays, I think women now scream because they can still scream, and I'm good fun to scream at. Why not? But in the end, what really counts is after the screams die down, are they still applauding? And if they are, I'm a winner. But if they're not, I just have to go home disappointed and work harder tomorrow.
Okay, we're going to play some records from your new CD, which is called Two's Company. And in this CD, you're basically taking great songs and performing them with great artists. The first question I'm going to ask you is the impossible one. Which song is your favourite from the new album?
When you sing Anyone Who Had a Heart with Dionne Warwick, and she's sitting beside you, there's no way I can explain what it feels. I try to write it on the sleeve notes, a very simple thing. I have never got used to hearing my voice played back. I still get a kick. I can't, when I'm singing it, recording it, I can't wait to, I always say, can I come in and hear? Can you? Then they say, no, can you do it 3 or 4 more times? And then when I've done it 10 times for the producer, they let me come in and hear it. And I still get a kick. Now, can you imagine adding to that the feeling I get about hearing myself, because I can't get used to that.
Just a couple of questions about making this CD. When you're recording with someone like Elton John or Barry Gibb or Sarah Brightman, as is the case with this new album, is it still uncomfortable, even though you're Sir Cliff Richard, meeting people who are as famous or more famous than you?
Yeah, it is. I think it is. I mean, I don't know that you ever get used to meeting people who have celebrity, but because you have your own, you're on a level playing field, and so therefore you can come in and it's a little more comfortable. When I first met Jerry Lee Lewis, I was really worried. How do I look? Someone took a picture of us. Well, he's going to look like rock star, and I'm not going to look like rock star. But once you have your own celebrity and you're comfortable with what you are and where you are and who you are, you can meet people. But I liked singing. I loved singing with Elton, and that's part of the pleasure of it, to actually share the moment of creativity with another artist. And that's how it happened. The whole album's like that. The goosebumps factor is how I work on things. When Bruce Welch came up, we were about to do the album I'm Nearly Famous. I had been given Devil Woman about 18 months before, and I had it in my hot, sweaty hands thinking, can I do this? Will my fans allow me to sing a song like this when they've got used to me singing Summer Holiday and stuff like that? And so I presented my song to Bruce, and he presented me a whole batch of songs, and he said, look, but this one, listen to this. And he put on this the tape of Dave Townsend, who wrote the song, Miss You Nights. Well, we stood on my balcony in my house. It was a lovely day, actually, and we were leaning over the balcony, and the music was really loud. And I said to him, look at my arms. He said, look at mine. He said, all the goosebumps, all the hairs on the arms were all standing up. And the hair on the neck had all gone. We don't do that often enough. We don't allow our emotional instinct to say, gotta record this. I just heard a remix of one of my songs. The song was called Can't Keep This Feeling In, and done in a real fantastic remix, bass, and other voices going, can't keep. They never used the melody at all. They used 2 lines, I think. Now, this is my big contention. I would like to work with some of these remix people, but I would insist that they finish the song. It's no point in having a song like Miss You Nights where you only have, but these Miss You Nights, get more, hey baby, but these Miss You Nights, yeah, hey baby. To me, it's just lost everything, even though you may like the sound. When I heard this track, I thought, it's me? The sound was fantastic, real black, soul, everything was there. But the song wasn't. So, I mean, I've got all strong feelings about that, but I don't know how I got into that, but I liked it.
Let me put a call into Eminem and see if we can get something going between you and him. Maybe a brand new thing could get you off in the States again. And what do you think?
Fantastic. I'd have to choose the songs, though.
Right.
And he could do the music. Well, I haven't been wrong with my songs, and he's not been wrong with the music. So maybe the combination will be good. Because sometimes we get trapped into, oh, he does that, or he does that, she sings like that. No, most of us have got other things that are dying to come out. Now, what you have to do is learn to be honest and say, when I did that, it wasn't as good. Okay, it may not have been bad, but it wasn't great. So if you're at least honest with yourself that way, you can end up with a whole bunch of songs that you like, but also liked by other people. So it's not a bad idea. That actually, I'd love to. If anybody wants to do that, phone me.
All right, let's hear the song then. Miss You Nights by G4. Very quickly, will we ever get to hear this live with you and the guys?
Well, it's always possible, but when I did the album, I'm going on tour now, and there's no way I can expect all these people to be available for me on tour, but I couldn't afford them for a start. Can you imagine what it would cost? It would be ridiculous. We'd have to play to 10,000, 100,000 seaters every night, full. So, and still not afford them. So it's just not feasible. So I'm not even sure if I'm going to sing Miss You Nights, but I probably will have to. I've tried not to sing it and been abused in the best possible sense of that word. They are so upset when I don't sing it. So I might have to put it in. But I think I'm going to sing Ocean Deep, which is it varies. Sometimes Ocean Deep is their favourite song, and sometimes Miss You Nights. So because I sang Miss You Nights on the last time, I'm going to try doing Ocean Deep and hoping that will be all right for them. But if they want it back in, I'll do it. I don't mind. That's a great song to sing anyway, but I can't get G4 to be with me. So I'm going to do, for instance, things like Anyone Who Had a Heart, not with Dion. Look, if she was in the city, or even if she was at the gig, I would certainly ask her to, and if she felt she could do it, then we would do it. But So I'm going to do some of the songs with my backup singers are 3 fantastic singers, and I've just added a girl who's a very good singer too. So I can sing the girl duets with her and the boy duets with my guys. I mean, these guys can sing me under the table. So there's no problem with that as far as I'm concerned. We'll be able to make a good job on it.
Whenever I do these programs, I get inundated with thousands of emails with silly questions to you and I, but questions that your fans want to know. So can we just go through some very quickly, and then we'll please them. I'll make them happy, and then we can get on with the show.
Absolutely.
Right. Your favourite meal?
Oh, I still think it's hard for me to top a good Indian curry and rice. I mean, it's become even better now because you can now have aubergines done in all sorts of different ways, brinjal. And I love a good dal, taka dal. So for me, that's always going to be one of my favourite meals. But of course, it's not something I don't think you can eat it regularly. I mean, it's too fattening. So I would give myself a treat of that once a month, but it still remains my favourite.
Your favourite meal to cook at home?
Oh, I like doing a leg of lamb. I mean, I'm really good I'm a meat and 5 veg person, and there are all sorts of ways. Again, when I talk about Brussels sprouts, people go, Brussels sprouts. I say, well, leave it with me. I've got a great American book called The Silver Palette or something like that. And it's got a recipe for Brussels sprouts, which is still boiling them, but they do a glaze made of... what do you put on pancakes? Maple syrup, mustard, vinegar. It's a sort of sweet sour thing. It's absolutely fantastic. So you can do. I love doing all that sort of thing, and it's easy to do. It's not a difficult thing.
Are you a good cook?
I'm good at that. I'm not quite sure what I'd be if I was trying to do what some of the designer chefs do on TV. Although, funnily enough, on TV I've noticed now that they're much more accessible. The kind of menus they cook there now. You think, well, I could do that if I could just remember what they did. And of course, you can always go onto the internet and get the stuff. You get the recipes and how to cook it. But yeah, I think I would be a good cook because I know what I like to taste. And I would be I'm one of these people that if someone says you put 2 onions into this, I would put 4 onions. I'm always adding. And then if I taste it, I think, oh, the red wine is going to taste. I just put it into my own taste. So in that respect, I'm adventurous as well.
All right, we're going through Cliff Richard's favourite things. Your favourite song ever?
Oh, it's impossible for me to say. I mean, I for a start, I've forgotten all the songs I've heard in my lifetime. It's just impossible. One of the ones that I used to like was a Fleetwood Mac song. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. That's always been one of my favourites, but I couldn't even say that's my favourite because I've got a feeling that there are other things that I like certainly as much. Well, Missionites as well. That's a song that it's like singing Honey. So there's a whole bunch. I don't know.
What are you playing at the moment in the car?
At the moment, I'm playing one track I like a lot. It's a guy called Joe Bonamassa. It's called High Water Everywhere. And it is the best guitar riff thing I've heard in the 150 years I've been singing.
Your favourite film of all time?
Do you know, at the moment, I think my favourite film was the Russell Crowe Gladiator. Before that, it was Blade Runner, Harrison Ford. But I think I've now seen Gladiator. Although there's one other though. I've seen Gladiator now probably about 6 times, and I know the story. We all know what it was about, but even still seeing it, I found the emotion of the storyline of this man in the end really trying to reach his wife. Even though when he did reach her for the first time, she'd been killed, he still went on into death to find her. I like stories that can touch you, and those kind of things touch you over and over again. But the other one that I just remembered is Groundhog Day. That's the one that I've probably seen more times than any other movie that I've ever been to. And every time I watch it again, because it's, well, most people know what Groundhog Day is about a man who wakes up every day at exactly the same time, and the same thing happens to him day after day after day. And because he does, he becomes aware that that's going to happen, and he knows what's going to happen next, and he can sometimes change that. And each time I've seen it, I thought, I didn't see that before. It's a fantastic movie. Well recommended.
All right, we're answering listeners' emails today. Ask Cliff. This can be a new feature, can't it? Your favourite comedian?
Oh, I think probably as a comedian, Tony Hancock. I used to be an avid listener of the programs when they came out on the BBC way back. I think they're now available on DVDs, CDs certainly. But I've had tapes of them for years and years and years. But he was very, very special. Somehow his humour went with his own personality, but he used his personality to create this character that was so lovable and yet so nasty sometimes. You wonder how it worked, but it did, and so he would be definitely my number one.
And the final email that always comes in when you're on the programme, will you ask him, will he marry me?
Yes, if you're prepared to wait a while.
Let's talk about show business generally, because when you started, it seems to me there were more personalities and variety performers, the Bruce Forsyths, the Ken Dodds, people like that. Are we ever going to see another generation of those types? We've got Anton Deck and we've got Peter Kay, and we've got Robbie Williams, certainly in your league, who's selling out the huge arenas, but they seem to be few and far between compared to years back, or is that not the case?
Well, no, things change, though. You can't... It's a bit like saying, would Federer beat Rod Laver on the tennis court? I mean, it's impossible to tell. They play different styles of tennis. If Rod Laver played the way he played and Federer plays the way he does now, Federer would win. Love and love. But it can't work that way, because Laver was playing what he needed to play, and that's how far the game had gone. And Federer has had all those years of other people's experiences, finding new techniques and everything, and stamina and food and diet, and then he's there. So in the same way, the world has changed. Alternative comedy came in, and for me, it never appealed to me. I found it ugly, aggravating, and vindictive. And I could never laugh at that. And that's why when I mentioned Tony Hancock, there was a nasty edge to this person that he played, but he was never always the winner. And yet somehow or another he could make you laugh without being embarrassed or upset in any way. And I think they've lost that. I may be wrong, I'm not an aficionado of comedy, but that changed. Until you allow people to be personalities with their humour, how are they going to replace Hancock? Stand-ups will always be there. Stand-up comedians, who some of them, I mean, we probably not see half the really good ones. They're probably just touring around doing what they do. That's always going to be there, isn't it? But if you want people like the Hancocks to come in, then Peter Kay and the others have got to do what he did. But why should they? Why should they want to be like him anyway? If they can make their own way and win their way into our hearts by doing it some other way, fine. But it's changed. I think there's just as much comedy going around in the country as there was then. But as you're saying, and I agree with you probably, that there's not many of them coming out in the way that they came up in those days. But there again, the playing field's sloping a different way now. Perhaps we don't need them the way they were.
Final question for the moment. If you could have dinner with anybody, who would it be?
Oh, there's a whole number of people, really. I mean, when I used to think about who I'd like to meet most, I met them. I wanted to meet Mother Teresa and I wanted to meet Billy Graham, and I met them, and they were both fantastic to meet, really fantastic. You know, I'd like to meet Ridley Scott. I mean, I've seen so many of his movies and enjoyed them. In fact, one of my videos, which was my pretty one, was based on a Ridley Scott feel. You know, I told somebody that's what I liked, and the director did it. You know, you'll see that show, that song. It's all got petals flying by the camera all the time. You know, Ridley has this thing of creating the image of like past primitive times where seeds that fly through the wind are constantly passing the screen, and it's fantastic. So I'd love to meet someone like that and find out how life works for him. I mean, I'd like to find out what he's like as a person as well, because it's hard to know whether you're actually getting a piece of Ridley Scott. You must get a piece of him because he's the one that's actually creating what you finally see. But there are so many other things that are between him and us: the actors, the scenery, the music. That's all done by somebody else's personality. So, you know, he's one of the people I'd like to meet. I'd love to meet Brad Pitt. You know, he's one of the actors that's come through where, you know, he came through as a heartthrob. Girls loved him. But I found that I could watch, you know, when I watched the Tibet story, the 7 Years in Tibet, I watched him as an actor, and I thought, oh God, it was so gentle and really thoughtful. So if you're going to be in the company of people at dinner, I suppose they're the kind of people you'd want to meet. Now, having met him, would I want to meet him again? I don't know. He might be an absolute pig, but I don't think so.
All right, let's take a penultimate piece of music and we'll be back with our remaining moments. It says here you've done a song with Matt Monro.
Yeah.
How?
Well, in the way that Nat King Cole sang with her dad, I found that quite moving as well, the fact that she sang that song. And it's just a matter of we had to find us a recording of Matt's that was on multi-track. There weren't too many of those, of course, because he'd started singing when it was all on mono, everything was on one track. We found, but I saw the titles, and they said, look, you've got this fairly small collection, but these ones are available, and you could stick your voice in here. And I always liked that song. That was a Nat King Cole song, I think, Let There Be Love. So I thought that's the way, and his wife was happy that I should do it. And again, obviously I wasn't going to meet up with Matt. Matt died, unfortunately, some years back. But I'd always been an admirer of his. I liked the way he sang. It took me years to really understand what those kind of singers were doing. When I started singing, we didn't, not verbally put down, but in our minds, Sinatra, Crosby, Matt Monroe, Dickie Valentine, no, rock and roll is the way. As I grew older and gave myself time to listen to Dickie Valentine and Matt Monroe and Frank Sinatra, I realized, wow, these guys, they really knew what they were doing. Their voices were not like ours. Now, of course, ours weren't like theirs. I mean, we use our voices in different ways. But I saw what work must have gone in to control that vibrato and make your voice sound that pure. And so for me to get a chance to sing with Matt is terrific. Now, I still use my kind of singing voice. I change it a little, only a little, but not much. I wanted to match what he did, but not be exactly like him. And when I heard it, we realized he was singing live as well. Because once you opened up the track, you could hear all the clicking and clacking beforehand. The orchestra was waiting to play, and he sang that live. So it was just wonderful to put the two techniques together. So in actual fact, therefore, the two people that I didn't actually sing with are Matt and Anne Murray.
Earlier on this year, I had the pleasure of interviewing Frank Sinatra Jr. at the Palladium, where his father's musical was being staged, where his father sang live every night to a live band. But of course he wasn't there, and it completely freaked me out. And I asked him how he felt watching it, and he was perfectly fine with it. Isn't it a bit odd singing with someone who's dead?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's art, remember? And so if you have respect for somebody, it's almost a privilege to think, I wish I'd sung with Matt. Well, now I can say I have. And so in that respect, it's a completely nice thing to do. And it is I did want to show a sign of respect for him. One funny story is, some years ago when I was, long before Rod Stewart did his album and before Robbie did Quit While You're Swinging and did jazzy things, I had started compiling an album of stuff. And I thought, what kind of songs would I like to do? And one of mine was Matt's song, Softly As I Leave You. The other was a Cole Porter song called Every Time We Say Goodbye. So I'd started work on it 9 or 10 years ago, but they beat me to the punch, so I've put mine on the back burner. I'll do it later. But Softly As I Leave You was recorded with, I did it with the London Philharmonic, and it got terrific reaction from the fans. And Matt heard it, so it was a long time ago when I recorded it. And his wife said to me after Matt had died, she said, "You know what? That was his second favourite version." Because his favourite version was his own. And having heard that, I thought, well, that was a really funny thing for him to say. Oh, that's my second favourite version of that. So I was really pleased. So it was obviously he'd heard what I had done with something that's really connected with him. It's a bit like Move It or Miss You Nights with Me. It's connected with me. Not that other people shouldn't sing it. People remember it as being yours. I would always think of Softly As I Leave You as being his.
Is it fun being you?
Yeah, it is actually. It's better now because as you get older, you get confident and you feel no fear, rightly or wrongly. Other than when you go on stage for the first time of a tour. I mean, whenever a tour starts, I always have panic moments. You've done what you can to rehearse it, but will you remember the dance step? Will you sing it in tune? Will you fall over? Will the band fall over? There's so much on your mind and so much there that you're terrorized by it. And so for the first couple of shows, I tend to be fairly nervous. But once that initial nerves have gone, it's pure enjoyment. Because, I'm working with gifted musicians and gifted dancers. How can it not be nice? It's a fantasy come true. So I still enjoy it, and I enjoy it more. And that confidence, though, that I was talking about is not only about the performing side of it. It's about how you face the press, how you face what you feel is going wrong, how you feel about the way you're treated. You become less intimidated by it, really, and you think, shrug your shoulders and say, don't want to play my records? Well, tough luck, your loss, and move on. I couldn't have done that 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But I feel like it now, so I'm very happy with the way and where I am.
So what was the turning point then that made you come to terms with it and think, I'm actually bigger than all of this?
Well, it's not a matter of being bigger than everything, because no one's bigger than everything.
No, but to be able to rise above it and think, you know what, you can't hurt me anymore.
Well, the press were very helpful in that, because they seem to have taken on... Well, no, I'm generalizing here. This is not true of every journalist. Please don't believe that. But you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of journalists that will write things about you, having never met you, and being really rude about you. And I find that really still painful, that you have no comeback, no way of saying, no, I didn't mean that. I didn't say that. You didn't talk to me. Why don't you ask me what I think? And then I suddenly thought, what am I doing? I'm having sleepless nights because somebody I don't know has said made up a story about me. And that's helped, really. I think to myself, I think I probably will continue to have sleepless nights, but at least now I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't really matter, because in the end, they write something that nobody cares about. Otherwise, I would be a dead artist by now. So I think to myself, that's a comfort factor. So you can grow above it. I think it's impossible to lose the sensitivity that makes you human, which means that anybody that says anything nasty about you or me or any of you listening, and you find out about it, even if it's said behind your back, it's still going to irk and hurt. And you'll want to put it right if you can. That's human nature. So I think I'll always be affected by them, but not in long term. In long term, my mind is made up. If they never wrote another word about me, I'd be thrilled. But there again, having said that, I need them as well. I need them to talk about me. And if they talk nastily about me, I'm hoping my fans will read through all the crass rubbish and get to the facts. And hopefully they'll do that.
I think one thing that has really helped you is the invention of the internet. You have so many websites where your fans communicate. I mean, this program will be talked about for months. They did with the last one we made. They literally tell each other where they can hear it at what time. They tape it and send it to each other. I mean, it's a fascinating community of this huge number of people that suddenly are able to communicate. And as soon as anything comes out, they're there and they know about it. So as much as the music industry's changed where you might not get as much airplay, they're still talking about you anyway. So it almost doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter. But, you have to remember that my life began because I was a recording artist, and I still think of myself as a recording artist. Now, why do you make records? Well, you make records for yourself. Yeah, that's true. You make them because you want to hear them and like them. You make them for radio, and you make them for the fans. It's pretty well in that order, because that's the way it goes. You make them, they hear them, they buy them. So when they remove one part of that away and make it pretty now impossible to actually sell records to any great extent, it's very tough on a humble recording artist like myself. But as I say, you have to learn to get past it. Now I'm past all that. I can speak about it without I'm not irksome about it. I don't even want to. I don't need to talk about it. You brought this up. So it's just one of those things that happens. So you can get by. You can find other ways of presenting yourself. I hope my duets album will be one of the things I'm talking about, where I'll still better make records. It won't be quite as innovative or creative as making an album full of brand new songs. The best album I've ever done for the last 20 years is definitely the last one, and not the bestseller I've ever had. Something's Going On is a really good pop rock album with a country influence that's innovative and it's original. And I miss that. I'll miss that. If I can't do that ever again, I shall miss it. But I'll still be able to get into recording sessions. You know why? Because there are thousands of songs that haven't been heard sung by me. And I've got enough fans who might want to hear that, and I'll take the gamble and do it. So yeah, I can still get my satisfaction. But you were talking about what affects you and how you grow above things. In the end, you have to philosophize and say, am I going to die without airplay? No, whoopee. No, whoopee, it won't. But I'm over that. And I find that as life goes on, you get over things and you're able to continue the pathway that you've always trod. But perhaps you've had to leave a little bit of the rucksack behind. And I'm still doing basically what I want to do, and it's very pleasurable. And I wish radio good luck, because I'd like rock and roll to continue, and it really does depend on them.
Few things before we go that has changed, of course, is Top of the Pops has now gone. Downloads through the internet seem to be more popular and important now to the music industry. Do number ones even matter now?
What you've said seems to be absolutely right. When you think how it's changed and how quickly it's changed, 1999, Millennium Press sold 1.4 million. A few years later, 3 or 4 years later, Elvis is number one, remember, and it sold like less than 30,000. Not Elvis's fault. That's how the business has changed. So you have to say, whoops, this is all gone. Now, okay, then now you can still be in the charts. You can have an internet chart. I mean, in point of fact, if people download a track and they have to pay for it, and thousands of them do it, and you find yourself number one in the internet chart downloading, is that much different to have it a single out? Yeah, in some respects. You don't get a nice sleeve with the photograph on it. You don't get any information. You just get the music. On the other hand, it could be the demise of the album, couldn't it? Because why would you record an album? People don't really download albums a great deal. The big downloading is the odd track that they like. So in other words, it might be easier in some respects in that someone like myself can record one track, find one great track, like my new Christmas song, which I think is really good. One Christmas track and just make it available on the internet. But here's the big problem. How would they know to punch in Cliff Richard Christmas song when they haven't heard it? How do they hear it? My main problem is, how do they hear it? Okay, when I'm on tour now, thousands of people will hear me sing my new stuff and my new Christmas single. Now they might download it, but that's not the numbers that's going to take it to number one. So it's still a problem, but the internet's the future. Now we got to get around this. We have to find a way. How do people download if they stop listening to the radio, which I assume one day they will? Everything changes, so radio, beware, get ready. They're going to listen to something, although I suppose it'll still be radio stations that are only pumped through the internet, and people just pick out what they want from the internet. So no, radio will continue, and long may it continue. But it's still a problem for the artists making records. It means that the market will get smaller and smaller and smaller. If in fact we can only download what we hear on the radio, it'll be incredibly small. Whereas when I bought my records in the early days, there were thousands of rock and roll artists and jazz artists. During the course of a week, you'd hear them all on radio, and you would decide which one to buy, which direction to go. So there's lots of changes that I don't like, but I'll get over it, and the business will continue. But radio is really important. They've got to keep playing the music, whether it's mine or anybody else's, doesn't really matter now. But if our industry is to survive, it's gonna have to be played. So, and they'll always play somebody. So maybe I will suffer demise from the record industry, but the industry will continue, and that's what's important, I guess.
So Cliff, it's always a thrill and an honour talking to you, and you're always so generous with your time and your answers, and people just love hearing from you. So thank you so much for doing the programme today. Good luck with everything. And let's play this Christmas song, because it's just a great Christmassy feeling song. What about this one then? Is this as good?
Well, I think it's a different type of song. When I recorded it, I said I wanted a much more I wanted a sort of rock and roll, a good, solid, clacky guitars in the background. We've got the kind of belly sound in the vocals, but the lyrics are what make it. The melody's good. It can't be rap because I don't speak it, but it's a spoken song, and I love the lyrics are interesting. The whole thing about the satellites tracking Santa. We text our Christmas list. We leave our phone numbers just to help out old Saint Nick, but it still comes back. But tonight we'll still thank Bethlehem, and we're going to enjoy this 21st century Christmas. So I love the idea of the combination of what's happening today. The technology is there. Yeah, we do have satellites, and it can track Santa, but we can still come back and relive our past and see what's important in life. That we will wish peace on earth for men, and if ever we needed that, we need it now. So it has everything in its favor. In the end, Alex, how do you decide what someone else is going to like? You can't. You can only decide what you like. You put it out and hope, your fingers and everything you can cross tightly, and hope that they will capture what you got from it. And if they like it, they'll buy it.
The Alex Belfield In Conversation podcast with daisymedia.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to an exclusive hour-long programme with me, Alex Belfield, talking to an old friend, Cliff Richard. How are you?
Alex, I'm fine, thank you very much.
It's really nice to talk to you again. We seem to be doing this every year now, and every year you have a new album, and it does gangbusters, and your fans still love you even more and more and more. It must be great being you.
It is nice being me, actually, and it's one of those things that everyone for years and years now has thought that I kind of own Christmas, as though I'm the only person that releases a record. What no one seems to understand is that the reason why everybody and their mother records and releases records at this time is because between October and December, there are probably more sales than there are in the rest of the year. I mean, I know everything's changing because of downloading. Maybe downloading happens all the time, but the big hit records always happen at this period. And that's why people like myself, who are trying to make money for our record companies as well as ourselves, as well as songwriters, as well as musicians, we record and release things for this period.
I could be wrong, but I suspect that money isn't your main incentive in releasing a new album. Is it giving something back to your fans when you release one each year?
Well, it's a bit of everything, really. When I first started my career, I have to say, the reason why I started was strictly because I loved rock and roll. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran. Remember Eddie Cochran? So it was strictly for that. What happened is slowly as you become successful, you realize, oh, I'm having a fantastic time and they're paying me and they're paying me well. And so suddenly the money comes into it. So yeah, I have to be honest and say, I do it for all the reasons. And as I get older, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm in a business where, unlike a lot of businessmen I have a lot of friends who are businessmen, and sometimes their money comes in and they haven't done anything, because someone else has sold something for them, you know what I mean? Whereas I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, at this age, I only earn if I do it myself, if I actually go and physically do it myself. That has to come to an end sometime. But no, with an album like this, the pleasure was that EMI wanted to release a compilation of my successful love songs. And they said to me, what about if you could record 4 or 5 songs that you've always wanted to do but haven't recorded before? And I love that kind of challenge because there are so many songs that I wish I'd got first. And so I chose 5 songs that I really, really loved, and I did them. And the danger of that is, of course, is that you find yourself in competition with some classic recordings. Because I chose some real fabulous records, I think. The originals were so good. So what I try to do is make them my own. And when we finished the tracks, my engineer and I were in Barbados together, and I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, I have to say this. They do sound like Cliff Richard records. So I thought, great. And that's all you can do, because sometimes you can't, even in people's minds, the original record, like for instance, my Move It. People keep saying, no one's ever done Move It like you. Well, that's very nice. Some of them may have done it better than me, but what they remember is their first hearing of that song in a particular time in their life, and that remains their favorite version. And that's true of the songs I've chosen to do. I don't know whether mine are better than anybody else's, but I'd like to think that they pay respects to a song and artists who have done a fantastic job having hits.
What fascinates me about this business is no matter how big you are, no matter how successful you are, or how long you've been doing it, you still have to go out and promote your records and let people know you're there. It's odd, isn't it? Because you've got such a massive fan base, yet you still got to tell them there's a new album out.
Yes, and it's even more so now because we all know, but the problems with radio is that I guess radio's just not big enough for all of us. So some of us have got dumped. And that's okay. There's nothing you can do about that. People play what they want to play. Fortunately for me, I do get played around. There's lots of regional BBC stations, gold stations that play me. But when you have a hit, you have to... Let me tell you this. When Millennium Prayer was out and it was number 1 and sold 1.4 million CDs in 5 weeks... I think I was told I had 400 plays that week, and I thought that was terrific. Then I discovered that other records were being played 2,000 times. Now that's the difference. So I can't expect that, and I don't expect that anymore. So I have to do much more in the way of interviews or television shows just to get myself heard. Because even if you're going to get a download, why would someone download you if they don't know you've got something out? So you're back to radio again. Radio is still, for me, radio and rock and roll. When I first started, radio and rock and roll were hand and glove together. I made records firstly for me, secondly for radio, and thirdly, if the public liked it, that was a fantastic icing on the cake. And the radio's been taken away from me. As you say, my fans have been loyal. And I still now have to aim my music, though. I'm planning to do an album of standards next year, stuff that I've actually tried out with the fans on stage. And they turned out to like all the stuff that I did by Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hart. And so I've got about 15 tracks that I'm preparing, and I'll go in and do that. Because, you see, that doesn't need a great deal of airplay. When I heard Rod Stewart's, the songbook, the American songbook, which I loved his songbook stuff. The first time I heard, It Had to Be You, and I thought, that sounds like Rod Stewart, but it can't be. Then Michael Parkinson said, and that was Rod Stewart. I went straight out and bought the album. No doubt about it. I didn't need to hear any more because Michael Parkinson said this album is just all this kind of music. So if I make the right album and if it's good enough, we'll release it. And if people hear me singing, I don't know, one of those standards, then they'll know what's on there. And by the way, Rod wasn't the first. even though I loved his tracks. I suddenly thought, why don't I do it? Then I thought, wait a minute, I did do this. I dug back to 1962 and I looked up 2 albums, listened to Cliff and one other, Cliff Sings. And on it, I sing, there are 8 tracks on each album, and I sing all those old standards. So you see, that was 62, Rod. I did it years ago. But I have to say, I loved that. I play that music in Portugal and Barbados. When I'm sunbathing, Rod's always on my, one of the CD jukebox setups. I haven't really quite got into the iPod. I find the iPod is going to take too much music, and I like to change my tracks. I like to change my CDs every other day. So I have it on for 2 days, and then I like to go through my hundreds of CDs going, ooh, I haven't heard that for ages, and play that.
Now, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Scylla. I just did an hour special with her. She gave me some juicy secrets about you. We're going to talk about the new album, of course. We're also going to talk about what it's like being you today. We're here at Television Centre at the moment, the day we're taping this. You're about to go on national TV, BBC One primetime tonight, and you're so calm and collected. We're also going to talk about the new album, of course, and I think it's unique, I think it's different, and I think it's really, really nice and listenable. So congratulations on that, because there's a lot of rubbish out at the moment, isn't there?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's I don't know, but unique's a difficult word to use these days, because it's only unique in that I'm the only one that's released this album. That makes it unique. But in terms of the musical structure of it all, it's not unique because there are other people who do similar kinds of songs. And in the end, I've always felt that really the music, the pop world is bigger than any of us. It is like a huge supermarket. And on every shelf, there's Cliff Richard or Celine Dion or George Michael or Paul McCartney, all the names you can think of. And people sometimes go to my track and pick it out and sometimes go somewhere else. But, these kind of albums have a place because they capture a mood and because we've gone for the love songs. And also I've tried to make sure that the tempos change a little too. There are a couple of tracks that have a little bit more beefy feel to it. And of course, my favorite song on the whole album, though, was not mine originally. People ask me what I think of contemporary writers and singers, and I said, well, I hear a lot of good singers and bands, but they don't seem to last. Whereas Daniel Bedingfield is still around. And I just, when I first heard If You're Not the One, I got goosebumps. Now, I do not get goosebumps anymore. I hear records that I like. I hear records and think, wow, listen to that drum and bass. Everything's fantastic. But I don't find the songs particularly memorable. I'm generalizing. Of course, there are the occasions. And then this occasion comes, and I thought, Daniel Bedingfield, he's done it again. He wrote this wonderful song, and it gave me goosebumps. And as I said earlier, the thing is to try and make it your own. And so I just did it my way. I put it in my key. I still got my height. I still got the top note. It's a different note to his, but it's in my pitch. And I love the effect of it. I love doing it. I don't know whether he's heard it yet, so I'm hoping that sometime along the line I'm going to get a call. He calls me occasionally, that I'm going to get a call saying, what a load of crap, or loved it.
If You're Not the One's on the brand new album by Cliff. It's called Love, the album. And Cliff's with us for an exclusive hour-long programme today on your favourite local radio station. We're back with Sir Cliff Richard, If You're Not the One. Really high, that top note, isn't it?
It is, actually, but you see, it's not as high. It's not high for me because I chose the note that I could go do comfortably. I can go higher than that in the falsetto, but then it could sound a little strained. And so that's the wonderful thing about music. In rock and roll in particular, is a totally free art form. If I was an opera singer, I would have to sing the operas in the keys that they were written. And I know that for a fact because I've met Placido Domingo and I've met Dame Kiri Takano, and that's what they told me. You've got to sing it in. She said I've got to hit this high D. I can't take it down a tone. So that if you take the key down, you still sing all the notes written, but in a different key that suit you. So if You're Not the One, I just moved it to down a tone or something like that from what Daniel did, because he's got a high voice. He has a naturally high voice. His low notes are not as low as mine, and my high notes can't be as high as his. So I just made it mine.
It's interesting with Daniel, isn't it? He's only really known for that song, If You're Not the One. Robbie's only really known for Angels. Do you have to be careful as an artist that you might just get tagged to one song? Because when I think of you, I think of so many songs. Move It, Summer Holiday, Congratulations.
Well, no, I wouldn't worry about it, and I don't think they should. It doesn't matter if you're attached to a fantastic song. I love the fact people always, they knock Congratulations. And I said, but do you realize it's one of the biggest selling records I've ever had? And do you realize that at every birthday party and anniversary or something that people are celebrating, they'll tend to sing happy birthday and or congratulations? And I'm thinking, what a great connection. I'll never be forgotten because of that song. So if you've had your angel, if you're not the one, and everyone remembers you for that, how fantastic can that be? Because they're both great songs. But you see, the guys haven't been around as long as I have, and that's where I have the benefit. Not that I'm any better than they are, not that I don't know, whatever you want to think. It's just that I've been doing it a long time. So therefore, I went through a period where I sang just nothing but out and out rock and roll. So I've got all the Move It's and the High Class Babies, and then I went through the ballads, and I've got the All in the Games, and then I got the movies with the Summer Holidays and the Young Ones. And so therefore, as time goes by and progresses, you find that you may not have number ones all the time, but you have them quite often, and that's all it takes. I remember having this conversation with Daniel Bedingfield once when he asked me, he was very new on the scene, he'd had 3 number ones, I think, on a trot. I've never had 3 number ones on the trot. And he said, how many number ones have you had? And I said, about 14, I think. And he said, is that all? I said, Daniel, is that all? Do you realize how hard that is? 14 number ones. And he said, well, I've had 3 already. And he said, and one of them I didn't think was very good. So I said, well, just be prepared. If you have a number 2, please do not think it's a failure. It's not. My career is what it is because I've had 36 top 5s, because I've had 120 top 20s and 14 number 1s. And that's what makes your career. That's what it gives a whole bunch of people choices of songs that they will remember for all sorts of reasons. So I always like to say to people who are kicking out, don't be pushed. Again, they need the support of record companies. They remember when I first started, my first record was number 2. It wasn't number 1. Move It went to 2. High Class Baby went to number 7. Living Loving Doll went to 17. In the meantime, I'm panicking, and Norrie Paramore, my producer, was saying, don't worry, we'll find the right song for you. Sure enough, Living Doll, bam, number 1. Traveling Light, bam, number 1. Those are my 2 number 1s on the trot. I've never done it again.
Isn't it more of a numbers game now, though? You only need about 20,000 to get a number 1 today. In your day, you needed about 250,000.
Yeah, it is. And that's where, in fact, that's where we benefit, because it's never going to change back, I don't think. Not with downloads. And unless we start getting millions of downloads, no, that's never going to happen again. So that's why when I won that Ultimate Pop Star thing, they did a TV, it wasn't a vote or anything. They actually counted up all the singles released in Britain and how many singles each one of us who had released singles here had sold. I was so shocked. I cannot tell you, because once I knew they were doing it, I thought, well, I could be number 3. And I would have thought that Elvis and the Beatles would have beaten me. But they didn't. I was the ultimate pop star. I sold more singles in Britain than everybody else. So I was thrilled about that. But that again, how can that ever change? That was for the last 50 years, by the way. What happens in the next 50 years? I don't give a darn. That belongs to the new generation, and they can have it. Because this is how much it's changed and how quickly it's changed. In 1999, when I released Millennium Prayer, I know it was I don't know why it was so controversial. For me, it was an anthem that any religion could have sung. It didn't actually mention God or Jesus. It was just praying for a fabulous future together. And it sold 1.4 million in 5 weeks. Elvis, about 4 years ago, had some singles released, and he was number 1, and it sold 30,000. That's not Elvis's fault. It's just the industry had changed. In 4 years, it had changed so drastically. So, I'm so glad I started when I did start. And I do wish people well, though, because obviously you have to keep looking to the future. You have to realize that the downloading is probably where we're going to go. I don't think that's the best thing, because people tend to download one track. Hello, if I want to buy a Bonnie Raitt record, I want it to be a whole album, because I love her. And even though I find my favorites on that album, after 2 or 3 months, my favorites have changed, and it's the one I like least that I now like at number 3 in my chart. And you get to know the artist much more. Getting the odd track, I don't know. Maybe that's the future, and I've got to learn to live with it. But, I'm already planning that when I do my tour next year, I've got a fantastic song written by a friend of mine who wrote Saviour's Day and Little Town for me, the Christmas hits. And he's written me this wonderful song. And I thought, what am I going to do? It's such a waste. I felt like saying to him, give it to someone else to record who can get downloads. And I thought, wait a minute, why don't I try? Why don't I just make one single? Just make this record and put it out during my tour and say, this is only available on a download, and see if I can make any impact. there again, I would have to tell them, or if I was really lucky and all the radio stations became really nice to me and decided for my 50th year they would all play that track and let everybody know that it was available, I could well have a download hit. But who knows? I'll keep trying.
And I'm sure you will. We're going to take another piece of music from the album in a second from now. You made me think of a question that my favourite interviewer asked Pavarotti a few years ago, which is Larry King, and he said to him, how do you feel about the fact that you're going to be played long after you're gone? And I thought that was a tremendous question. How do you come to terms with the fact that your music will live on literally forever?
It doesn't bother me at all. Of course, that's one of the nice things if you've got a successful career, and I can't grumble about mine, can I? That there will be people that will be playing. I am part of musical history in Europe, and I know that rock and roll is an American art form, but it doesn't belong to them. And we've proved over the years that we can come alongside them and share charts with Americans and sometimes beat them. So for me to think, and after I'm dead and gone, that records of mine might be played is a fantastic feeling. What I'd love, though, is for them to say, Cliff Richard died at 105 last week, and do you remember this record? It was just last year that it was number one. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Fingers crossed. We can make it happen if we get all our friends to do it together. We'll be back next with Sir Cliff Richard here on your favourite local radio station. I'm going to take my favourite song off the album. I still can't get over this track, Miss You Nights, which is just so moving and anthemic and beautiful. I think it's probably your best track ever, if I can be so bold.
No, you can be bold. I mean, I do think it's one of the best tracks ever that I've had. It's certainly one of the best ballads I've been given to sing. I'd mentioned about, If Not For You giving me goosebumps when I heard Daniel's version of it first. I sat in the car going, it got under my skin. When Bruce Welch, who produced that track, brought it to me at my home, I had already got Devil Woman in my sweaty fist, wanting to record it, but thinking, how am I going to do this? People think of me as the man who sings Living Doll and Summer Holiday and stuff, and I've got just a devil woman, but I wanted to do it. Now, Bruce came in with a whole bunch of songs. I played him Devil Woman. He said, fantastic. Then he said, listen to this. And he put on, a guy called Dave Townsend wrote the song, and he'd recorded it for Island Records. And he played me Dave's version with all the harmonies that I do. His voice is different to mine, obviously. Well, we stood on the balcony of my home, and he said, look at me. And I said, look at me. Our arms were covered in goosebumps. And I just find that it doesn't happen to me as much anymore. But certainly with some of the songs that I've been given to sing, some of the songs that I've chosen them because they've had that effect on me. I had the same effect with some people. And there are a number of them that I feel, this is really special. You don't necessarily know that because you get goosebumps, it's going to be successful, though. Because somebody else might get goosebumps listening to something else. So I release it in all good faith and hope that somebody out there might feel the same. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I mean, Miss Unites, I think, is very, very special.
Let's hear it. Isn't that beautiful? It's from the new album called Love. It's by Sir Cliff Richard. It's called Miss Unites here on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield talking to the man himself in a rare and exclusive hour-long programme. One question I've got to ask you. In a couple of hours from now, you're going to be live on BBC One national TV performing a song. Anything could happen, anything could go wrong. And you seem perfectly calm. How do you manage to do that?
Well, again, I've dealt with it before, and so therefore I've discovered that it's actually nothing to fear. The only element that is fearful about television is when it's actually live. And I've done a couple of those in the last couple of weeks where I've had to promote and it's been live. Okay, you're on air in 7 seconds and you go, oh my goodness. At least when you do this particular show, I got a chance to rehearse it. And in the case of this one, I can pre-record it live with the audience. I've got to sing it live. I've got to do it as though it's live. But that element of actually going out to the nation and going is not there. If I do it wrong, I can actually say, please let me do this again. And I can do it again. So that aspect of it is taken away. But even doing it live now, as long as you know what you're doing, you'll never stop that pounding of the heart that goes just before you start. The minute you start to sing and you hear your voice coming through and you hear the band and you think, well, this is how it should sound. It's okay. You can wipe everything else out.
And what about those live shows when things don't exactly go to plan?
Oh, I've done a few of those. I mean, someone may remember, although funnily enough, they covered it really well. The last time I did a Royal Command show, it came from Cardiff. And they gave me a sound pack. And I had a routine worked out with some dancers, and it was a whole medley of my songs with routines in it, all the songs. Well, I had to come on and do this hip thrust. The battery pack flew off my belt. The headset is clipped into it. stuck into it, the weight of it carried itself and the plug came out. So now I can't hear anything. I'm still trying to sing without able to really hear myself, pick up the pack, try to put it back on my belt, and then continue. Well, I did not like that performance. But in the end, they said to me, listen, don't worry. We had so many camera angles that when that thing shot off, we just went quickly to somewhere else. When you came back and you were trying to put it on your belt, we just did a close-up of you so that people went away. When I saw it, it was true. But it still nevertheless was the most uncomfortable performance I've done for many, many years, because when something like that happens, you're desperate to stop. And then you think, but wait a minute, there's 2,000 people in a theater watching it. I don't want to stop in front of them. So I pounded through. But it turned out to be all right. But no, those kind of occasions, fortunately, are rare.
And I'm sure with a live show, nothing can go wrong, because if it did, it would just be part of the show and you'd make something funny out of it.
The stage show, it's you're kind of in charge. And if, as this happens with me, it's happened 2 or 3 times at the same song, the song Dreaming. It's got this fabulous intro, you know, da-dum, da-da-da-dum, down, down. And I'm going, clap, clap, da-da-dum, down, 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 clap, everybody clap, down, down. And I'm thinking, what's the first line? Down, 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 down. And I said, stop, stop, stop. And then I said to the backing vocal group, what's the first line? And they look at each other and go, I don't know. And a girl said, 4 o'clock, I've been standing all night. So I got the lyrics from one of the audience. Then we said, okay, we'll start again. And then when it got to the point where I had to sing, I got this huge round of applause because I started singing it. So you can actually make fun of yourself and have fun with it with the crowd. But it's not something you want to have happen. But the audiences, I've noticed, no matter where you are on the planet, they actually like it when you become human. Because sometimes from their point of view, I always rehearse. I do not like making mistakes. I do not like things going wrong. I always say to the band, we got a review once in America when I played there. It said, watching Cliff Richard's show is like watching a video. And I thought, they were being detrimental with it though. I said, oh my, that's fantastic. The band said, do you want us to make mistakes? I said, please do not make mistakes. I don't think people pay to see mistakes. They want to see what they see on television, what they see on a video, as near to that as possible. They want to hear the record as close to the original as possible. And that's what I do. So if a mistake happens, you just have to roll with it. Yes, you can have fun with it, but in the end, you still have a little session afterwards saying, okay, what went wrong?
And 78 albums. What was number 15, by the way?
Oh, I have no idea.
And what was number 25? You just can't know, can you, at this point?
Well, also, I can't know because the 78 albums, I only heard this just recently, that when it was announced on an introduction of myself, that 78 had been released. Some of those, of course, may have been a couple of albums in a year of compilations. I've had a string of silver discs, number 1, silver discs 2, gold discs by Cliff, gold discs by Cliff and the Shadows, another gold disc. So they come out all the time. I think the studio albums, original albums, it's much less than that. It's probably nearer the 40, 50 mark.
All right, I want to take another piece of music from this, and I want to come back and talk about Scylla, because I've got some real gossip. I don't know what to play next. I liked When You Say Nothing at All, which was the Ronan Keating one, wasn't it?
That was from the film, the Notting Hill film, wasn't it? At the very end, I always loved his version of it too.
Shall we play that one?
My version or his?
Your version.
Oh, well, okay, yeah.
I'm not going to play his version. You'll say here with me.
I like his version, but no, play mine.
Nice version of When You Say Nothing at All by Sir Cliff Richard off his brand new album called Love. It's Alex Belfield with you for an exclusive hour-long programme. Now, I've got to ask you, Cliff, about Scylla, because when I was over there at her place recording one of these programmes a couple of weeks ago, she told me that she nearly cost you several £1,000s because she waffled during one of your live shows.
It was at the Albert Hall, and I'd said to her, would you like to come on and sing a song, maybe do something yourself? She said, oh, yeah, I'd like to. Then she got really nervous. Anyway, she came backstage and she heard the roar of the crowd and she said she felt good. So I introduced her. I said, we've all of us got our devil woman, and here's mine, Miss Scylla Black. And she came on and she was fantastic. The crowd loved her. Then I came on and we sang the duet together. And she's got her arms in the air and a split skirt and everyone's going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I thought, I can't go on like this because after 11, you're fined for every minute you go over £2,000. So I sidled over to her and I was smiling and I said, thank you, Scylla, get off. I've only done it to 2 people, and the other person, believe it or not, was Olivia Newton-John. Same thing. Olivia came on tour with me, said, I don't want to tour because I'm too nervous to work these days. And I can tell you this, I got her out of retirement. I talked her into it. She came on tour and now she doesn't stop again. But she came on and she loved it. And she's got her hands up in the air and walking around the stage. And I had to go up to her and say, Olivia, please, get off.
I think you've got a great life now because you're able to do this for a couple of months of the year and you work so hard promoting your albums and then you're able to clear off and be you and do what you love. What do you love doing the most?
Oh dear, there's loads of things I like to do. I suppose that, to be honest with you, when I've got a couple of hours spare, there's nothing better than getting with a pro and hitting a tennis ball. I just love the sensation. I love, it's not just playing the game as such. It's also the fact that you feel your lungs pump, you feel your pores wet, and I feel good after a hit like that. And I say a hit because very often I don't play, quote-unquote, tennis. Because to play the game, the idea of playing a game is to hit the ball as few times as possible and win the point. So that if you're lucky, you might get to 4 shots, and the next thing someone's bouncing it, and you're breathing, and you're being served to or you're serving. Whereas if you hit with a pro in practice, even if you hit the ball out, he'll get it back. If he hits it long, you still run back and get it back. Then you drop shot, then you run forward. You hit 100 times more the ball. So therefore it's much more aerobic. And I like that. At my age, I think to myself, there's no way I'm going to win a tournament unless I'm playing with Federer. Then I might, and I do my best. But so for me, if I can just get some technique going, I started so late in life, I can never really get it to look right. But sometimes I do. And the more I play it, the closer I get to making it look right. And you can only be a natural player, really, if you start really, really young. And so I can never say I'll ever be that. But I do enjoy it very much. I love watching it. And I have my tennis foundation, which is now locked in with the Lawn Tennis Association in Britain. And so we're looking forward to continuing our work among schools. And hopefully, who knows, Alex, we've looked for tennis stars for years and found a few. We've had Greg Rosetsky, we've had Tim Henman, we've got Andy Murray now, who's really so improved and could be a chance for us winning Wimbledon. So from our little efforts, we might find more tennis players.
So we know what you like to do. That's tennis. Where do you like to do it? Where's the best place in the world to go?
Wimbledon. I mean, I happen to be a member at Wimbledon, so it's always great to play there. But my life is in the last few years, even though I'm trying to slow down, has been almost more tumultuous than it's ever been. So I haven't had a chance to get there very often. But when I do, it's a great place to play. It's a wonderful atmosphere. It's a club, remember. In fact, it's the only Grand Slam that actually is a private club. It's almost as though we let you all in to watch the tennis. So it's a great privilege to go there and play. But anywhere there's good weather is good. I love playing in Portugal at my own home because the only time I can get the coach is between 12 and 2 in the afternoon, and it's about 90 degrees in the shade. And again, I love it. I love going out there, sweating, and when I come off, I feel like I've had a real workout, heart's pumping. And within about 4 or 5 days of playing with a coach in those conditions, I get through the hour with only one stop, maybe for some water. So it's very fit-making.
Whenever I interview you, I always come away feeling inadequate. Because you're so blessed with talent, of course, but then you're so thin. Most guys of your age are having heart attacks and are about 48 stone.
Well, a lot of it's to do with discipline. You have to be disciplined. And of course, my career has been a disciplined thing. You have to commit yourself to a project and you have to stick with it. If you want to look good on stage, you have to give up something. You have to. And also, just in terms of health now, you don't have to be an artist to be motivated to be slim, because being slim, of course, is no guarantee that you won't die early, but at least you give yourself a chance of living longer, because if you're doing what doctors are recommending, which is doing a little exercise, some dieting, making sure you eat the good food as well. Dieting, you can actually eat bad food and eat less of it, but if you eat good food, you can actually eat a little more of it. But doing all of that keeps you fit, and that's mainly my motive for the fact that I look slim, is partly because my build would never allow me to be fat. But remember, I used to be 12 stone 7 and I'm now 11 stone. So I was, quite a bit heavier, 21 pounds heavier. Now I stick to 11 stone, and whatever I can do to keep it there is fine by me.
And the ladies always go on these message boards on your fan websites and say to me, please can you ask him, how does he look so good in the face? Creams, potions, lotions, surgery, how do you do it?
Everything. You've got to, I've been at the BBC before now where the makeup artist has come and said, have you tried this new stuff? And I said, well, what is it? Write it down for me. And she'd write down some kind of, moisturizer or something like that. And I'm thinking, I've started using all that stuff. Because nowadays you realize that, as men, we are just as much damaged by the environment as women are. And if you want to look good, and remember, probably if I wasn't a singer and being photographed all the time, I probably wouldn't bother as much, to be honest with you. But that is a great motivation. I know that people are going to take pictures, and although I'll never look 18 again, and thank heavens, I just want to look as good as I can look at this age. And anything that'll help, I partake of it.
When you see the old black and white film of the guy in the 60s that was having all those screaming teenagers around him, is that you? How do you view that person all those years ago?
No, it's still me. I still recognize it. I still think, I can remember that like it was yesterday. I see some odd photographs. I found some photographs the other day of my mom and two of my sisters with me in Greece when I was filming some holiday. And suddenly I thought, I can remember it. I remember that bus. I remember the whole thing we filmed in Greece, up in the mountainside. And then by putting snow on the top, they technically put snow on, and that was Switzerland. So I can remember things so vividly that it just feels like yesterday. No, that Cliff Richard still is me, but I've obviously realized that you can't live in that world forever. You've got to move with the world as it moves. And I've tried to do that over the years, and maybe that's helped me attain longevity.
We'll take another piece of music from the album Love.
Of the other songs, Some People, to me that's a classic pop ballad. When you think about it, you're right smack in the middle after about 2 verses. You get that instrumental sting goes in, and in the middle of it, and you suddenly go, it's Alan Tarney and people like Terry Britton, who wrote Devil Woman. They really know about pop rock, and they know how to do it. And I just wish they'd write more, and not just for me, but for some of the new guys.
We're back with our remaining moments with Sir Cliff Richard. Great song, great album. We've got a lot to talk about in our remaining moments. I saw something on the TV, and I think this was a joke. It was a calendar with pictures of you naked. You can't really be releasing this, can you?
Oh, yeah, I'm not naked, though. It's sort of stripped to the waist and shaving, I believe. And I think the Daily Mail got hold of it and did a good story. It was a fantastic story from my point of view, because they actually took a shot of me from the early 60s, where I was stripped to the waist also on a beach somewhere, and said, look, he hasn't changed that much. And I hadn't really. I was surprised. My physical shape was pretty well the same. So it was a nice article for me. But no, I mean, it's just fun. I'm just trying to think of different things to do. When you do a calendar year after year after year, one close-up with a smile is about the same as any other close-up with a smile. So we try to think of different things for me to do, whether it's wearing big bomber jackets and slouched over a seat, or shaving in the morning, stripped to the waist. It's just fun.
What will you be doing for Christmas this year?
Shaving, stripped to the waist. I'm going to go, my family and I are not together this year, so I'm going to take the opportunity to spend Christmas in New York. For anybody listening, it's a good time to go to America because the pound is so strong against the dollar. But apart from that, New York is a wonderful city at Christmas time. Some of the trees on the streets are wrapped in white lights, not just the trunk, but the branches, not just the branches, but every flipping twig. And it's magnificent. The whole area is wonderful. So I'm going to enjoy that.
And the Rockefeller tree has got 32,000 lights on it this year.
Is it really? Well, I always go to see that too. And right opposite there, of course, I don't know whether it's on Fifth Avenue, that big building there. Last year they had every half an hour, they had a kind of light show. Music was pouring out from everywhere, and the lights were going all over the building. There was a whole, it was choreographed lights to the music. It was fantastic.
Sir Cliff, thank you very much for talking to me again. It's always a pleasure. Every year we do these interviews, and your fans just love it. They can't get enough of you. And seeing you just rehearse there for the show you're going to do later on the BBC is incredible. You just come alive. It's so you. And after all these years, it's remarkable that you even can be bothered to do it. Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all your listeners too. Thank you for supporting me and following me all the years. And, I'll see you next year. I'm on tour, so I guess I'll see most people.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and you too, and a Happy New Year.